Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's CA PPM community webcast. We've got quite a full agenda today. We're actually going to have two sessions. The first one with Steve Judge from the education team here at CA. Going to be talking to us about what's new in CAPA version 13. And then after that, we'll switch over to a session that Glenn Kiso, principal consultant is going to, at CA here, is going to be talking to us about project management to better UX. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As Chris said, I'm from our customer education team. Really excited to talk to you today about what's new in the latest release of CAPA 13. The new release is built on a completely new technology platform with a new user interface and development and deployment engines, and provides improved functionality to support both business process and CA PPM adoption. So first, I just wanted to take a step back for those of you that might not be familiar with CAPA. So CAPA is an end-to-end solution that allows customers to collaboratively create, manage, and deliver a full range of training, enablement, and support material to help drive effective user adoption. That includes formal learning, like classroom training, informal learning, and ongoing performance support and application help. We help accelerate time to value with pre-built CAPA or CA PPM content, which also helps customers get a jump start on content creation efforts. So CAPA 13 is a content development and delivery platform which allows customers to capture their system configuration, their underlying business processes, and their SME or subject matter expert knowledge. And from a single authoring session, they can then publish those out into multiple learning outputs, including job help, business process documentation, in-application help and support, assessments and reporting. You can publish the content out onto a learning management system, be that simulations or ebooks, for example. It creates presentation materials, including instructor and user guides and documentation. Customers also can use it for UAT test scripts as well, and also the communications that wrap around any kind of learning and technology project. It's the single source of truth for all learning and adoption material, which helps drive consistency and adoption throughout the organization. Now, one of the big things in CAPA 13 is it's no longer just for capturing system processes within CA applications such as CA PPM. It's now an unrestricted license, which means you can now capture any application using CAPA 13. So it can be utilized for all system-based training across the organization, and saves you the cost of purchasing and maintaining multiple tools. Now, aside from extending the value of CAPA across your system-based training, you can now also utilize the tool set for non-system processes, and that's extending its value even further. So it can be used for example, business process adoption, soft skills training, HR onboarding, and compliance training, for example. So it's providing learners with access to all of your learning content from a single source. Okay, so CAPA 13 is comprised of four main solution components. So starting from the top left, the CAPA developer aligns to what was known as the CAPA editor in previous versions, and it contains similar functionality. However, it offers a great deal more functionality to content developers and instructional designers with an enhanced version of web page creation, which provides options to capture your system configuration, your underlying business processes, but can also incorporate assessments and quizzes easily and animation and media can be quickly integrated into courses, for example, as well. What a new feature is what we call the instant developer, and this is kind of a lightweight version of the developer. So the instant developer it provides subject matter experts or business process owners with a simple and fast way to record a process. And the content can be enhanced with the addition of audio and text, and then shared with the main Kappa developer to integrate into, say, formal courses or informal learning, other content and material that can be utilized to drive adoption. The Kappa developer can then refine and publish that and make it immediately available to users and learners. On the bottom right, the Kappa Manager, this is also a new feature. So in Kappa 12, the editor was used for developing content. And when the content was ready for deployment, it was published to an LMS or a web server, for example. Well, this is no longer the process in Kappa 13. Now, when your content's ready to deploy, you simply place the content into the manager, and it's immediately available to your learners. So publishing is no longer an additional effort. Learners can then access this content in an area of the manager known as the library, and they can only see the courses that are assigned to them by their role. Also, the manager can be reskinned to reflect your organization's branding. So if you have corporate standards, we can help you rebrand the manager to look and feel like your corporate standards. The desktop assistant is also new on the bottom right-hand corner. So the desktop assistant is an in-application delivery mechanism for context-sensitive support, which can be recorded against any application. There's a requirement to install a small software client on each user's desktop in order to access the desktop assistant. But this is a major step forward for Kappa, as in earlier versions, context-sensitive support was only available via the Learn link in the classic UI of CA PPM. So there are three performance support options available within the desktop assistant. You have what we call the concurrent mode, where the user walks through a process live in the application. There's context help, which help identify in the live application any configuration changes. And then there's the guided tour. So the guided tour provides a tour of the process by highlighting action areas, again, live in the application. So your users don't have to leave the PPM system to get the help and support they need to drive productivity. So all of these performance support features are an output from the developer's initial recording, and no additional development time is required. Okay, so got a few kind of screenshots to show you the new features and functionality. So this is the desktop assistant. And within the desktop assistant, the current mode allows the user to move through the process, just as the do it mode did in earlier versions of Kappa. But a simulation provides guidance in a window that floats over the live application. A light bulb icon, if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, the light bulb icon sits on that side of the user's screen, and when they open an application that contains performance support content, the light bulb comes on to alert them to the available content. They can click on the light bulb to see the link to the content. The users can also access context-sensitive help from the desktop assistant. This is a completely new function for Kappa users, whereby identifiers can be added to the application at a field level to flag changes or updates. This feature is really powerful when you wish to highlight configuration changes to, say, users within an application that's familiar to them. These definitions actually sit within the live application and are used to explain the changes. Okay, the guided tour. So this is also a new function whereby the process is communicated via sequential action areas. So if a user is unsure of a particular process, they can be guided whilst working live in the system. The guided tour is integrated into the application itself, and all of the learning dialogue is shown on screen within the live application highlighting the action areas, and taking the user through the process step by step as they work on through each process. So the manager, so equivalent to the library in previous versions, the manager provides a kind of light learning management system or a light LMS functionality, and the content authors develop, host, and deploy the content via the manager. So it's kind of like the central portal that everything's managed through. Now, one thing that a lot of customers were asking us for were kind of usage reports, which were not really available in previous versions. So the new manager provides customers with reports. The reports are accessed via the manager. There are 6 reports available out of the box with the ability to add customized reports as required. And learners can also report on their own progress as well. Reporter profiles can be assigned to managers. Like permissions can be set up so users can only view reports when they log into the manager. And reports can be selected by things like name, lesson, types, for example, like simulation, quizzes, assessments, etc. Assignments, time period, user identity. And reports can be exported into Excel for further analysis, for example. Okay, so CAPA 13 really has been designed to provide customers with a self-service learning support solution to drive increased user proficiency and productivity. It helps simplify user onboarding and enablement throughout the life cycle of the software. And this graphic here is just really used to highlight the fact that, you know, with traditional methods of training like classroom training and e-learning, you know, users often forget a lot of what they learn over time. But with this in-application support and the context-sensitive help on demand, it really helps customers drive productivity, drive user proficiency with that kind of ongoing performance support from within CAPA and from within the application like CA PPM. Okay, so one important thing we wanted to highlight today as well is that CAPA 12 is being end of service at the end of January in 2019. So customers can upgrade to CAPA 13 at no charge as long as they have an active support contract for CAPA. We also offer a quick start service, which includes things like training, deployment, migration, and migration assistant, along with expert advice to help customers do the upgrade. We also offer a range of expert services. So for those customers that may need additional support and help with the migration to CAPA 13, we do offer more. So it's not just a quick start service. We do have a full range to help you achieve those goals. Finally, to learn more about the latest release, please visit ca.com/CA Productivity Accelerator, or you can contact your account team locally to schedule a demo discussion and talk about, you know, the new version, talk about migration options and strategies, etc. That's it. Thank you very much. So, Chris, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve, for sharing that. Folks, if you have any questions during the session, you can ask your question in the Q&A tab. Just be sure to ask of everyone so we're sure to see it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn here. There is one question before. Hey, Glenn. Hey, there's one question in the Q&A before we move on to Glenn. For Steve, I think, it says your screenshots show the classic UX and PPM. Does it also work with the new UX?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is yes, it does. So within the new UX, we haven't kind of brought over any of the links, including the Learn link. So in previous versions of Kappa, you had to click on the Learn link in the Classic UI to access the content. That's no longer the case. But we will continue to support the Learn link in the Classic UI for those customers that want to continue to use it. But with Kappa 13, the integration is on the Kappa side. So we can link the desktop assistant, for example, to both the Classic and the new UX.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And Glenn, without further ado, it's over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. Happy summer, the first day of summer. I'm Glenn Kiso here with CA, a Senior Principal Consultant. What we're going to look at today is version 15.4.1 and some of the new UX capabilities around project management. So if you're new to the 15.x platform, or if you haven't rolled out the new user experience yet, you'll see a number of different changes than when we had originally released this new user experience. So I'll be sure to point some of those out as we go along. So the first things first, I'm currently logged in as a project manager. And the first view that comes up is essentially our project listing page. And as you probably can already imagine, it looks quite a bit different than the classic UX. The main differences here is that each of these tiles are individual projects that are configurable in what we're calling blueprinting. And blueprinting simply allows different kinds of projects to have different metrics. So instead of looking at like my next milestone date and budget remaining for most of our projects, maybe some of the lightweight projects, you don't necessarily need to see that information. So you can very easily change this to the days remaining, what's the next milestones, even down to configuring what kind of sort of quick links or modules do I have access to, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. So just having access to information very quickly as you log in, I don't have to drill down to see some of this, has been a nice enhancement. So the first thing I want to come and kind of talk about is this blueprinting. What is blueprinting and how does it help within project management? Blueprinting essentially allows you to have different kinds of templates. Now, we've always had templates in the past, but these templates are slightly different. They really allow you to really tailor what functionality and the complexity that you want to enable in a given blueprint or in a given project template. So let me kind of dive into one to kind of show you what I mean by that. So in this case, I'm going to drill into this international trade show project, and I'm going to click on that little task link. And now I'm actually in an international trade show project. So as you can see, there's only 3 tabs up on the top here. There's tasks, we have conversations, and we have a status report. There's obviously the milestones and when things are going to happen up on the top. But in this particular view here, we're actually looking at all the activities. These are all the tasks, who's working on these tasks, and they're ordered by what we call a task board, where you can very easily create these columns however you want to. I can insert a new column here, and I can call this could be for, let's see, I can rename this to the actual venue. Oops, I didn't mean to click on a new task. Let me go back up here and do the rename of this to be the venue. So whatever I want to do, I can very easily come in here and create that new column that I want to move the information back and forth. Now, these individual cards, and you just saw me add a new task here, they're essentially just tasks as we normally would have in our traditional view. So if this was a Microsoft project plan, all those tasks and milestones will show up as individual cards, right? Now, within each of these individual cards, you can see some status in terms of these check marks and this little conversation icon. What we've added here are some extensions to our traditional task management. So now we have to-dos that you can manage within tasks themselves. We also have the ability to look and manage conversations. So within each of these tasks, the team members can collaborate with one another. They can create their own to-do lists. They can monitor them, and you can essentially complete them as you need to. There's also a lot of different ways. Let me go ahead and just delete this for a second. There's also a little different ways to configure your views. If I want to actually look at just one particular person, and maybe I want to focus, or maybe I'm logged in as Lee, and I want to know where all my activities are, right? They can filter just their specific views of the information. They can essentially organize where the work's going to fall into, and they can essentially configure and update the information very quickly. Now, what's nice about these views is if I click on like the to-do list as an example, as I click on other tasks, this pane is persistent. So I can update all my to-do lists by simply clicking on the various cards, update them very quickly. I don't have to drill down necessarily into each one of these in order to do so. And the same thing with conversations. As I click on different cards, those conversations will just simply update. So the need to drill down to find and update information is eliminated. Now, there are different kinds of boards. This is just one example. I've got different tasks. I've got marketing, procurement. Let me kind of just show you a couple other examples of different ways you can configure these task boards. So here's one that's more of a traditional project, and I'll get to all the different tabs here in a second. But this is looking at tasks based on status, right, with where it's planned, where it's in progress, has it been completed, has it been accepted, as an example. Might be one way to organize your tasks. Another one might be based on if you're integrating with an Agile tool, like Agile Central, as an example. These are all tasks, but they're actually features as part of that integration. It brings over all the features. And then I can organize them into releases, right? So different ways of managing and organizing how tasks are being monitored in these boards. And some of them might be just as easy as how we started it, what's going to do this week, what's in progress, and what things might need to be monitored. So this gives you that flexibility of organizing your tasks however you want to. So that's the task board, very straightforward. Now, these tasks that I've been talking about, they all exist as we currently know it as tasks in a project plan. And you still have access to that. So I have phases, I got activities here. These are the same kind of tasks you would typically manage in a project schedule. We just now have the ability to do to-do lists and manage other activities. And it's very easy to come in here and create a new task. This might be, Glenn's task. I'll just add that in there. And essentially that's going to allow me to then take that task. I can move it wherever within the work schedule I want it to be in. And I can basically add resources to it, create to-do lists, and so forth. Now, if you're asking, well, what about the traditional Gantt charts and working with other schedulers? No, that's still all there. So for those project managers who don't necessarily need or want to use a scheduler like Microsoft Project or Workbench, they can simply utilize these task lists or the task board to manage their projects. Now, behind the scenes, this all has the standard functionality that we've always had in terms of scheduling projects, looking at dependencies, critical path. All that information is still there. So you're still going to have that capability of creating dependencies between activities, as an example, very easily. That's all there. It's just if you want to, right, you can come here and manage more complex schedules. If you don't need to or don't want to, you can just simply use one of the task views, the task board or the task list, to manage your project. Okay, and of course, if you want to use a full schedule like Project or Workbench, that bi-directional integration is still there. So that's the task management aspects of the new UX, and we'll dive deeper if there's any questions later on. But some of the other functionality that we've added in the new user experience is conversations. And you saw conversations a little bit on the task. This is where we are trying to really allow team members to interact with one another, not just simply work on tasks, but really collaborate within teams to understand status, to update or raise issues, and basically have an ability to have a historical context of these conversations. So I can tag someone here as an example. I can give them a conversation link. And as I post this information, they'll have all their notifications via email as well as within this sort of notifications section. Well, it will highlight anytime you've been mentioned or you've been replied to in a conversation. You can easily see those notifications. So that's the conversation side. And on this project, there's only one other tab, which is the status. Or I can very easily come in here, or even the team members potentially have the ability to come in here and update the status. So if I completed a task, as I mark it off within the actual either the task board or the schedule, you will show them here. You can even configure these views. So if I wanted to have like a calendar section at the bottom of this, let me just add that in here. Hit close, and now I've got this bottom section popped up. It's got a little preview of what's coming in the next couple of weeks. So very easy way of creating and updating status reports, and the ability to publish them as needed. So I can actually, on a weekly basis, I can come in here and I can create this report. I can then publish it then they'll have a running history of all my historical project status reports listed here over on the right. Okay, so as you can see, this project is very straightforward, just tasks, conversations, and status reports. Now, that's all done via the blueprint. So in this particular blueprint, we've limited it to just a handful of functionality, right? Made it very simple, very straightforward. There's no complex setup. It's very quick and easy to manage. Now, other projects may not be as simple. So here's an example that we kind of saw a little bit earlier when I looked at the actual task board here, which was a little bit more complex, right, where I had the actual status of the different tasks. Now, you can still manage the activities, as we saw earlier in the task list or in the Gantt chart, in Microsoft Project. Well, that all still exists, but you can see in this blueprint there's more functionality that has been enabled. So if I want to look at the conversation page, that's still there. We now have other things like risks, issues, and change requests. So if I do want to manage my risks, I can do so here. You notice that there's these new icons that we have that shows that there's conversations. So conversations now essentially pervasive throughout the new user experience. They're there in tasks, they're there in projects, they're in risks, issues, they're even in resource requests as well. So they're really a core part of the application now. Now, some of these new views like risks and issues are also configurable. So just like we had in the classic UX, you can easily now open up this panel here, and I can basically add what specific columns I want to be able to sort of look at. I'm just going to randomly pick a bunch of fields here and basically close out of this. And all those fields now appear on my view. Now, in this view here, we also have some sort of Excel-like capabilities that I can actually come in here and start pin this column. So if I want this left-hand name to kind of lock, so if I scroll to the right, I don't lose the context of what a risk I'm looking at. You now have that kind of flexibility and the ability to basically come in here and say I want to pin the name of the risk, so as I scroll to the right, it locks, just like you would in Excel. So a lot of new features that we really enhance the ability to tailor the views, especially for those who view that like to add a number of different columns, even to the point where I can even right-click and I can insert a new risk. So I can add a new risk, change the category, update the information as needed. And once again, if this was a mistake, I just right-click and I'll just delete this row. So lots of ways to add risks. You can even just click on the plus button as well. That also adds risks into the view. And you can manage your risks, issues, and change requests. And they all work essentially the same, being able to add your specific columns, pin the columns, and so forth. So that's the risk, issues, and change requests. I won't go too deep into the functionality. It's essentially the same sort of information we tracked in the classic UX. Just adding them is just in a slightly different manner. The next view we'll look at is on the financial view. So here in the financial view, these are your cost plans, right? So you can still have multiple cost plans. I'm just looking at my current plan of record here. In this view here, you can actually look at it different, and you can sort of look at it in the different views that we had before. So I'm looking at planned and actuals currently, and any kind of variance. And in this case, I can click on this little showing legend here, and I can basically add and remove columns as I need to. So in this particular case, this remaining is nice, and I can see any kind of variance. So if I'm looking at this and wondering why do I have a variance for Sage Copeland here for $5,760 when I was only planning on spending $1,440, you can actually click on the actual number here, and it will actually show you all the individual transactions that made up that $7,200. So very quickly I can see, oh, this might have been rework that we had to do, or this task took longer than expected, and that's why there was a variance on that particular activity. So just a very easy way of drilling down and seeing the information. So once again, I can basically start hiding information if I wanted to and just look at my planned numbers. Now, even these views have a number of different ways of configuring it. So as an example, if I wanted to, maybe I just want to see actual spend for the first few months. Because I don't have any actual spends in the rest of the year, I can very simply just add the ones that I want. I don't see actual columns here because they're out. They're out in the future. There are no actuals yet. So just a very easy way of organizing your view so that it makes sense for the way you want to look at it. Last thing on this particular view here, we'll look at how you can organize the data. So every time I see this sort of column layout, I can drag it to the top, and I can group by, let's say, cost type. So I'm now looking at CapEx versus OpEx spend, and you can drill down and see the information as you need to. If I don't want to see it by CapEx or OpEx, maybe I want to see it by individual resource, I can do that. So if one of these was a contractor, I can very easily see how much we've planned or even how much we've been billed, as an example, by looking at each individual resource. So just an easy way of organizing and interacting with your finances in these new cost plans. So very much an interactive way. Now, you still have the ability to create and modify and create new cost plans. If I wanted to create my next month's forecast, I can simply hit the copy button, make this my July forecast, and it will now basically give me a new forecast. It's not the plan of record yet, but now I can come in here and manipulate my numbers and change them as necessary, just like you would in the classic UX. Now, you still have the ability to populate from allocations and assignments. So if your schedule had slipped, the cost can then automatically be shifted by using one of these two options. Okay. A couple other things on the actual project, and before we kind of move into some of the resource and the timesheets, is the changes in the document management. So you still have the ability to create folders, to upload documents is very easily. I can also start tagging these documents as well. So it's just a quick way of saying whether or not this is a deliverable, if this is a design doc. You can very quickly add tags to the various documents. So pretty straightforward. It's just a nice sort of repository to upload or download documents. This links tab, you know, we've always had links. They're just very well hidden in the classic UX, but now we sort of brought them to the forefront because a lot of organizations use a lot of different tools, whether it's Agile Central, whether it's Jira, whether it's Power BI or Tableau, just the ability to very quickly provide links into a project. So if I want to know what's the overall reports, I can launch, this is one of our new capabilities in the 15th series of having this OData service that allows you to create, you know, more advanced visuals. This is using Microsoft Power BI. You can use Tableau, right? These are augmented additional reports other than the Jaspersoft reports. So you can really go crazy in creating these interactive dashboards using this new OData service. So, so we won't go into too much of that, just to give you you know, just to let you know that it is there and it is available for you guys to leverage if you want to. So we looked at the links, the conversations, the finances, the staff. The only other thing we'll look at here really quickly is just the details. So the details essentially just allows me to look at, this is our properties page, right? And this is where you can also really configure different pages based on the blueprints. So some blueprints might have this lean cabiness, so the business case. Other blueprints might omit it entirely. Some blueprints might have additional fields that you want to have on risk or issues or any kind of status. Other blueprints may not have it. So you can actually configure these for each blueprint, very much like you would in Studio in the classic UX. Okay. So this is the project management side of it. From a resource management aspect, I won't get into too much of that, but there is obviously the whole staffing capabilities that we've had within the new UX. There's another webcast, I believe, next week that's going to go into more detail, but just the ability to come in here and for your individual projects, I'll just briefly touch on this very quickly, come in here and forecast for my project. So if I'm managing the Eclipse enhancements, I can see my individual resources, I can see their FTEs over the next few weeks. Then you notice something different here. It goes from weeks, and then it goes to months, and then it goes to quarter, the fourth quarter, and if I scroll to the right, it goes to the fiscal year. And that's called a telescope, and that's something that each user can configure, and that's all part of your settings. So you can actually come in here and say, you know what, I want to see maybe 4 weeks, and then 2 months, then 2 quarters, and then a year. And basically that will then change the sort of the groupings of weeks into 2 months, into 2 quarters, and then the fiscal year. So it just allows you to provide a level of detail. We know the detail in the next few weeks, very in more detail, but as we go further out, a little bit more fuzzy. We don't have as much concrete detail, so I don't want to forecast by week, 2 quarters from now. So you can just lump them up into higher level buckets. And this forecasting is nice. So I can come in here and I can essentially just update the forecast if it's 0.5 as an example. Or if I wanted to, I can say maybe I need a forecast for July, or I'm sorry, for August. But August is sort of, as a month. You can actually just change your forecast here. So I want to change this to August 1st as an example, and now it will start the telescope. Whoops, hit the wrong button there. From August. Let me set my view here back to July. Okay, so that's one way of looking at the information of updating the hours or the FTEs. And as we saw earlier, you can actually configure these views as well. So if you don't want to see it in FTEs when you're looking at weeks, I can just change that and say, you know what, I want to look at hours for the next couple of weeks. I don't need to see it in FTEs. So this view is going to be a little confusing. So I've got hours and FTEs on the same view. So I may forecast weekly in hours, but over the next few months or quarters, I may want to look at them in FTEs. So giving you that kind of flexibility, we provided that in the new user experience. So timesheets, let's move on to the next subject. So timesheets is once again very much redone in the new user experience. Very quick and easy to create and update actually in multiple time periods. We have this new carousel at the top where I can very quickly move between the different time periods as I need to. I can submit them very easily. I can also, as a manager, look at other people's timesheets as well, or if I have to submit it on behalf of somebody, I can come in and here and see Alex's timesheet, the one that she's been submitted. And if I had the ability to approve her as her manager, you do have the option to approving or rejecting her timesheet directly from this view if you wanted to. Now, likewise, if you are a timesheet manager, you could come into the sort of the review and the approved section, and this essentially allows you to see all the open timesheets of those who haven't submitted them yet, and you can send them a reminder if you want to remind them all. It will ping them via email that their timesheets are due. If I need to approve timesheets, I can come to this list, and I'm just going to click on the headings to sort of filter, right? So I unfilter the open. I'm just looking at the submitted, and then I can actually come in here and quickly look at each resource's timesheet. So if I want to look at Alex's timesheet, I can just, as I click on Andy, it will switch to Andy's timesheet. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way is I can click on this detail, and it expands the view so I can see the entire week's entries for their time. And it has the thumbs up and thumbs down to approve or reject. Now, what I would recommend is just simply toggling through these different views and just look for the exceptions. So I'm not going to approve the ones that are okay just yet. Maybe Hank's timesheet looks a little off. Maybe I need to then return it. So I can click on the return icon, and I'll basically go through my entire team and make sure that I don't see any red flags. And once I've done that, I can just simply come back and hit the approve all button. So you would just reject the ones that you want to return, finish that off, and then approve the rest that looked okay. So it's just another way of very easily and quickly being able to review and approve the timesheet. So last thing is I did want to show you a little bit on the actual blueprint itself of how this is kind of getting more from an administrative perspective, that these are all the different kinds of blueprints you can create. And in these different blueprints, as an example, I'll go to the demand one here. It allows me to see the screen. This is very much like using Studio. So in this particular view, I can edit this. And if I wanted to, maybe I want to see who the account manager is. I can simply drag that to a particular section. And I want to make this 2 columns wide. And that's how we are creating and configuring the individual screens for these different blueprints. Right, so very straightforward way of just taking a specific field and you can drag them wherever you need to. Okay, so I'm not gonna make this change happen. So I'm gonna discard my edits here, hit the confirm button. So another big thing that you've seen throughout this demo is there was no save button. So you haven't seen me hit the save button at all. So as you make those changes, it's done. The changes are committed into the system. The only time you need to hit a save button is when you're sort of saving a filter or saving a view, or if you're deleting something it will actually ask for a confirmation. And that's basically the only time you're going to see a prompt or the need to actually save before you leave your view or leave your screen. The last two sections here on the blueprints are the visuals, and these are the tiles that you saw on the project page, which are the individual cards for each project, and they had certain metrics on it. This is essentially where you can come in here and really change what those metrics are. So I want to move the start and finish date over as an example. I can just drag that over, and maybe I want to see days remaining. How many days are left, right? So I can just enter that particular metric into that card. Now, from a modules perspective, the modules are the tabs essentially, right? Do I want to see risks? Do I want to see the issues? Do I want to see the finances? And those are the modules that it's going to appear in this particular blueprint. So if I don't need to see documents, I can just clear that out. If I want to see issues, I can basically drag the issues out. If I want to reorder these in which way you want, you can do so. So the modules simply allow you to include or not include certain functionality for a particular blueprint. So very easy, and even the configuration is quite a bit easier than having to know Studio. So the last thing I want to mention is that all the information you enter here is the exact same if you were back in what we call the classic or the core UX, right? So it doesn't matter where you enter the information. It's one and the same. So if I add a risk here in the classic UX or project, it's going to appear in the new UX. If I enter it in the new UX, it's going to show up here. It's not two different databases. It's still one system. It's the same set of tables that it's saving the information to. You still have all the standard reports that you can use. And once again, these reports, you can schedule them, you can email them. The nice thing about these reports is you can export them to multiple formats. Let me just kind of show you one status report, which I'm sure most of you have already seen by now, but I'll just bring it back up again. So here's the project storyboard. You can schedule these to run, so all the PMs get a preview of this the day they're due, right? So they have a day to update this and make sure everything's correct before it gets published out to leadership and to other stakeholders. But the nice thing is they can get a copy in PDF. I personally like the PowerPoint extract, so as I get this could be an attachment in an email of all my projects and their status report in a PowerPoint, right? So when I open this up in PowerPoint, what's nice is we actually embed all the text. So it's not just a screenshot attached to a slide. All the different sections are actually embedded. So if I needed to edit this or sanitize this for a vendor, everything is fine, right? No problems, right? So I can basically come in here and edit this for certain stakeholders, or maybe I need to take something out, so something I shouldn't actually see. You have that capability of essentially tailoring the report to your various stakeholders very easily. So not that this is always recommended, but for, as PMs, right, there's a lot of different stakeholders you account to, and different people want to see different information. That gives you the ability to tailor the reports to each stakeholder. So that's on the reporting side. Whether you're using the new UX or not, you still have. Okay. And the final view is what's in it for your team members. So the team members are going to have a task view, which is very much like the organizer, where they can work on tasks, they can filter these tasks, right? They can work on the information. And essentially, it's all their tasks across multiple projects. As an example, if you see it in blue, that means there's a conversation in this particular task, and I can see the to-do list as well. So once again, you can just simply click on other tasks, and it will then update the to-do lists, right, as you go through multiple tasks, right? So you don't have to drill down anymore. You just open this pane, and as you scroll through these different tasks, it will then update the information. Same thing with even the conversations. So very easy way of updating the status, the to-do lists in the task view. Okay. So that's it for what's new in 15.4.1. Now there's a lot more. There's a whole new road mapping concept that's also there. If you want to take a quick demo of that, I'd be happy to show you that as well. But that's most of the things that are new in the 15 series of CA PPM.
Well, thank you, Glenn. We do have quite a few questions here for you in the Q&A. So why don't we try and get as many of those in as we can. Julie asks, is the Gantt view actually displaying the classic PPM Gantt?
Yes, it is. It's the same sort of window that's in the classic. It's just popping it up while you're in the new UX.
Okay. Michael asks, can we add conversations programmatically, i.e. a reminder or status reports needing to be updated, etc.? Log, gel, rest.
Can you update can you repeat that? The conversations as a reminder?
Yeah, it says, can we add conversations programmatically? An example like a reminder or status reports needed to be updated, etc., using Zog or Gel.
That's a good question. I'll have to look into it. It is using everything in the new UX is leveraging some of the REST APIs, so some of those are still in beta. But there's probably the ability to use your REST APIs to sort of insert a new conversations, like like a recurring topic that's updated. That's probably possible. I'll definitely look into it from an API perspective if you can do that. It's not out of the box, but if we're talking about leveraging the APIs, I can definitely look into that.
Okay. John asks, can custom fields in risk and issues be exposed in the new UX? The
custom fields, I have to look into that. I believe the answer is yes, as long as we have the appropriate ID to have them appear here. I haven't actually tested that yet, but I'll definitely do so.
Okay. Let's see. Julie asks, is scope an attribute that you can add to the display for a change request?
Is scope, is it asking, is it an attribute that? Yeah, so if you've had the attribute in the risk, you can't add it to the view itself. It's just, or this sort of Excel grid, this grid view. So as long as that field exists, as part of the risk or the change request, you can display it.
Okay. When will the new UX be available for custom objects? That's a product management question.
That's $1 million question. Yeah, those are all items on the roadmap. I unfortunately don't have the preview of when they may be available. I know it's on the backlog for sure. I just don't have a date for that.
Okay, and for folks, you might want to attend one of the roadmap sessions. We'll have more coming up in July and going forward. There's 2 a month, so check those out. I know the July ones are not up on CA.com yet, but they will be soon. Let's see, Gail asks, do you have a lean canvas template built in, or did you add that?
Yeah, that was added, so it's just attributes that you would add, just like you would in Classic using Studio. So those lean canvas attributes would be the same way that you traditionally have configured, and that's just done through the Studio, adding those fields. And then through the new UX, I just added it to that particular blueprint.
Okay. Michael asks, how can we get some beta information on the REST APIs? I think that's again for product management. Michael, if you attend one of the roadmap sessions coming up in July later, you can ask Sprague about those at the time.
There is documentation on the REST APIs on the DocOps site, docops.ca.com, which is the support site. So although they're not technically sort of, GA in terms of functionality, the basic sort of layout of those APIs are already in the documentation. So you can get a sense for them on the DocOps site.
Let's see, Viral asks, how to bring the custom attribute in available section for details Is it possible for sub-objects for project? Is it updating REST API attribute and any impact elsewhere like reports? I don't know if you got all that.
Sure, yeah. So the sub-objects currently are not yet brought over. So it's only the higher level project attributes, right? So so that's still all done on the classic side. So I think there was mentioned earlier in terms of how do those fields get brought back in, and that's all done via Studio. And if you have access to that REST attribute API field, it uses that in order to determine what fields get brought into the new user experience. So just as a quick example here, if I go to a project object as an example, there will be, whenever you create a new attribute, there's a REST API ID. As long as you give it an ID, it will then allow it to be available to be put on the screen in the new user experience.
Okay. Another question from Julie here. On the task board, how many tasks will be displayed / manageable view?
I don't know if there's an actual limit on the actual task board. From a usability, that's probably going to be pretty sort of depending on your screen and how you want to view the information. Obviously, if you're managing thousands of tasks, it may not be as feasible, right? You may want to then start filtering, right? So you may only want to filter it by a task type or a phase. So it's probably going to be more, for those kinds of plans, you're probably only looking at milestones you may want to manage. So you may want to filter it based on certain, based on that type of task as an example. So obviously, yeah, it wouldn't be manageable for a multi-thousand-line project plan, but for those kinds, I would filter for just the milestone or just the key tasks as an example.
Okay. And folks, we do have a few minutes left, so if you want to get a question in, go ahead and get it in the Q&A now. Do have a comment here from Michael saying, helping you out, Glenn. He says, yes, if a custom attribute is created for a risk, they are available to be added in the new UX. He just tested it.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Let's give it another minute, see if we have any more questions. And one more here from Bral. Does any attribute update in the new UX trigger process in Classic?
Yes, so those process auto start and start conditions of when you update a field, those still apply. So although I don't have like processes sort of being able to see that here in the new UX yet, those fields can still be used to trigger a workflow process, and we've done that in the past. Where you can actually change blueprints. So you might have an ideation blueprint that changes into a proposal blueprint that then changes to a project execution blueprint. And I've done that by simply changing a field in the new UX, and that triggers the changing of the blueprint via a workflow. So yes, the answer is yes, you can still trigger workflows based on changing a field or an attribute in the new UX.
Excellent. Okay, well, it looks like it's it for questions. So with that, I'm to say thank you to Glenn for this presentation. Thank you for Steve for the information you shared earlier. Thank you everyone for participating here today. This session is recorded and will be posted up on the community site in the next couple days. And with that, again, I say thank you to everyone and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.